On today's show, let's go pessimistic. What's going to hold back the Dallas Mavericks? Why would they miss the playoffs next year again? We'll talk about the Mavs' 5 biggest flaws on their team and more on today's Locked On Mavs. Let's go.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. Join the Raccoon Squad, be an everydayer, subscribe, follow for free. Just search Locked On Mavericks wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any platform and to comment anything below. Let us know in the comment section, what's the Mavs' biggest flaw right now? Biggest weakness, biggest flaw. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free white tech hat that I was wearing yesterday. With any purchase, you won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that. If you want to support the show, text us. Get text alerts from us straight to your phone. Text us. It's easy as connecting with us, adding a contact, and then you just get to text Isaac and I. Subscribe to our subtext. Click the link in the description. I was texting with all of our subtexters today, answering a bunch of questions. I answered the question, what was my favorite movie of the year so far, Isaac?
What did you say?
Well, I was asking you, but mine, I picked Spider-Verse. It was between Spider-Verse and Barbie, but I think Spider-Verse was the one I walked out of the theater and I go, I can walk right back in and just watch that movie again. So that's my favorite one so far.
I honestly don't know. I mean, Oppenheimer was good, but I don't know if I'm ready to say it was the best of the year so far.
Joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, contributor at Mavs.com, Studio 41, the movie critic creature, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Well, I don't have any movie takes off the top. I have been rewatching the Avengers movies, so been kind of back into that. And tonight's the speaking of good television. Tonight's the Bachelorette finale. So, after we record this, my wife is anxiously waiting as we have it on. It's on pause. We're gonna see who she wants to get married to.
It says something about the two of us that the thing that you clown me about is watching Avatar, which is one of the greatest shows ever made, and the thing that you watch is The Bachelorette and The Bachelor all the time. Just says something about us, you know? I'm
just saying Barbie is like your favorite movie. I'm over here talking about The Bachelorette, so let's do this.
Hey, Ahsoka comes out on Wednesday. That's my favorite Star Wars character. I'm super ready for that show. So, on today's show though, Mavericks wise, outside of movie talk, we're going to talk about the Mavericks' biggest flaws, the things that will hold them back from making the playoffs next year. That's the goal. I think should be like the next thing. They've just got to get back, and then we'll take it there as it comes. But let's talk about their biggest flaws. We haven't talked to each other about these. We each named 5, and we're going to go back and forth and share them, and some of them will be the same, and some of them will be different. My first one.
Okay, I got to ask you first.
Ahead.
Did you rank them?
I did, but it's a loose ranking.
And let's clarify this too. It's like, are you answering the question of if they miss the playoffs, then this is their biggest flaws of why, or their biggest flaws right now going into because like one of mine's like kind of hypothetical, but because it's like this could be the reason. This could be a reason why they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a little of both. Like things that will hold them back from missing the playoffs. So yeah, it is a little bit of a distinction. But I did the things that will hold them back from making the playoffs.
Okay,
that are weak. That are weaknesses now. I mean, just is.
Yeah.
My first one, the number one that I think is their number one weakness, the number one thing that's going to hold them back. I'm still holding on to it. It's the center position. They still have not upgraded or even addressed definitively the center position at this point. They brought in Derek Lively. We hope that he'll be good, but we hope that he'll be good next year or the end of this season or 2 years from now. He's 19 years old. He played 1 year at Duke. He played 20 minutes a game. He wasn't like the guaranteed starter, number one pick. Like he wasn't that kind of guy. He's a guy that you bet on the talent. And from all we've heard from Maverick sources and people is that he's gonna not have a definitive role right away, right? Like we think he may spend some time in the G League, and people have said that recently. My other part about this is, what if Dwight is the only usable center? They brought in Rashawn Holmes, but he didn't get used by the Kings. What if he comes to the Mavericks and it's kind of, well, now we can see why the Kings didn't really use him. It's another JaVale McGee situation where, well, he looked good for that team, but then he comes over here and he doesn't look good. And then all of a sudden, Dwight is the only usable center again, and then you have to play small again with Maxey. You can put Grant Williams at the 5 a little bit. JaVale's still on the roster, but they don't think to play him. I mean, that could be the situation the Mavericks are in again.
Yeah, this one's definitely on my list. It's just a matter of like how far up the list that this reason is. I mean, it's clearly when you start listing, where you start looking at the things that Nico and them talked about what they wanted to upgrade going into the offseason. They've done a lot of them. Their goals for the offseason of bringing Kyrie back and adding more, bigger defenders, and getting a Grant Williams and getting an Omax in the draft. I don't know if they like specifically said this, but they got younger, at the same time. Yeah, more athletic. I want to say that. So the one thing that they just haven't addressed that they've been pretty adamant on is that center spot. And it's been pretty clear too. I mean, all the reports they've tried multiple times, multiple different targets. So it's not like that they, disagree with fans or even us. They know that. It's just a matter of there's a price too. There's a price. Atlanta wanted Hardy or Josh Green. Tim McMahon was on this pod, a few weeks ago talking about it again. And they were like, no, like we want an upgrade at the center spot. Your dog wants an upgrade at the center spot.
He's trying to get out of this room desperately.
But they're not, they just weren't the price for them to upgrade. It just wasn't worth it for them for that cost. So I think it's I don't know if I would put it number one for the reason why they don't make the playoffs, just because we've also seen this team go on a deep playoff run without a big and without a solidified, top 15 big, top 10 big or something like that. So it's a need. They need to do it. I don't know if it's number one for me.
No, it's going to hold them back. It's been holding them back. Like Dwight's been fine and good in his role, but they can only play him 18 minutes for a reason. They can only play him, 10 minutes in a playoff game for a reason, right? Like it's just not his role. And they if they had this, they would be so much better. I think it's the thing that's going to hold them back. And yeah, they can overcome it. It's their rebounding issue, which is like the way that I talk about it, the way that you talk about it are a little different. Their rebounding issue, they can overcome a bad rebounding game and make enough threes and do enough on the defensive end to make it work so that they can lose the rebounding battle by a lot and still win. But what if they didn't have to do that? Like, what if they didn't have to overcome that? And what if they could win the rebounding battle? What if they could have a good starting center that can protect the rim and rebound and do all that kind of stuff? Like, what if they had that? And so that's why I think it's the number one thing that'll hold them back. They can overcome it, but I think it'll hold them back. The other part of this is they have addressed it a little. They brought in Derek Lively. Maybe Derek Lively is like a Walker Kessler, and he'll be ready sometime in year one. Rashawn Holmes is addressing it, I guess, a little, bringing in a guy that's very similar to Dwight Powell. So at least you have a similar guy that you can play in that role. That type of guy works.
But Holmes, we got to remind people again. The Holmes deal was for Omax,
right?
Like it was about getting Omax on this team. Instead of, hey man, we really want to go out. Give us Rashawn Holmes. We really want Holmes.
Yeah, that's
cool that we get the pick. It was more the other way around. Like, all right, I guess we'll absorb Holmes. Heck, let's try out. Let's see. We think he could fit with Luka, but it was more about Omax in there. So
they were going to try to throw Rashawn Holmes in a DeAndre Ayton deal, right? Like he was one of the contracts that was going to be part of that deal. So they don't think that he's like the definite answer at this point. They're going to try him and see what happens. But coming up, we've got a lot more flaws, things that will hold the Mavericks back from making the playoffs, their biggest weaknesses. Talk about all that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs is amazing. I was wearing their shorts today. I had to go pick up my wife from school, and then I had to take her to the mechanic so
what grade is she in?
My wife's a teacher. She's an educator, Isaac. Still had to pick her up from school. And I wore my bird dogs, and I could wear my bird dogs outside. They were comfortable. They have these stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh. They do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better, and they're better than regular shorts because I look a little bit better. I didn't want to show up in, like raggedy gym shorts or around the house type shorts where my pocket is ripped, that kind of thing. I wanted to wear a little bit better looking shorts in case we ran into a coworker, so I didn't look like, I didn't look like a bum that works at home and doesn't do anything. Bird dogs can help you not look like a bum. Birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Enter the promo code LockedOnNBA to get a free white tech hat. Birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, that promo code is LockedOnNBA, all one word, all caps, to get a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you that. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, being an everydayer. We appreciate each and every one of you. Tomorrow, we'll be back with more Dallas Mavericks stuff. This weekend, we will be doing all kinds of FIBA episodes. We'll talk about Australia. If Josh Green plays, they were supposed to play early Tuesday morning, at least U.S. time, against Georgia. Looks like they're still going to play that game. I don't think Josh Green is going to play. Kane Pittman of ESPN Australia and Locked On Bucks told me he doesn't think he's going to play. But it doesn't matter because that game is not televised, apparently. So we're not going to be able to watch that one. But the actual FIBA games that will be televised and will count and all that kind of stuff will start on Friday. Australia, Slovenia, we've got you all covered here on Locked On Mavs. All right, Isaac, give me your first thing that will hold the Mavericks back from making the playoffs.
I mean, this isn't a shock if you listen a lot because we kind of just alternate both of these, Nick and myself. It's the wing rotation. Wings just mean so much, to especially really good teams. And you look at the Nuggets winning the title last year and having these big wings and Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. and even guys, a little bit smaller. The next, level down as far as just like height and size to guard the other point guards, Bruce Brown, KCP. Then you're not even counting like a Christian Brown or somebody. So they had multiple bodies, multiple positions, multiple sizes. And you look at Dallas and you got to project a little bit. You got to, if you're going to be really confident in Dallas's wing rotation, then you really got to project when it comes to Josh Green and Omax and even Dante Exum to an extent. Like, I don't know. I mean, I hear mixed things on like what Dante Exum's role could be next year, but it's like, you're projecting Dante Exum to have a role when he's been out of the league for a few years. You're projecting a first round pick in Omax to have a big role in the rotation as, a big defensive wing. You're projecting, Josh Green to take a big leap and all of that. So when you look at the wing rotation before, it's like you knew what you were getting in Reggie. You knew what you were getting in Dorian Finney-Smith. Those guys played, in that playoff, in that Western Conference Finals run over, 40, 45 minutes a night. You know what you're getting, all of that. Josh Green was coming off the bench. He was kind of the guy in the Dante Exum role, this way, and so now that's just the thing right now. Grant Williams is the only sure thing that you have on the wing right now that you pretty much like know what you're getting as far as 3-point shooting and that defense. And even he didn't play at times for Boston last year. So I really like the addition. We're really big on him in Dallas this year, but still that's the big wings matter so much. And I still think they need another one at some point, but that would be the thing that I think could hold them back.
I have this at number 3 for me, and I just put the roles are too big for Josh Green, Grant Williams, Derek Jones Jr., Omax. It's those 4 guys specifically to me is that, like, specifically being too big, because Grant Williams is the biggest, or I guess Omax is 6'8". He's the biggest wing that they have. Grant Williams plays bigger, but he's 6'6". Josh Green 6'5". Derek Jones Jr., even though he jumps out of the gym, he's 6'5". So that roles are too big has a double entendre there with that being too big. We have to remember Grant Williams was a 25 minute per game bench player, role player for Boston. And now the Mavericks are coming in and bringing him in as their most important, perimeter defensive player. That's a step up. It's a projection, like Isaac said. Josh Green was supposed to step into the starting role after Dorian left, and he did. But remember, he got put on the bench at the end of last year too. I mean, he wasn't a definite starter, like a sure thing. One of my things for Josh Green this whole offseason has been leave no doubt that you are the starter, that you are that guy, that you are, maybe the third best player on this team. Like leave no doubt this offseason and then going into the season, training camp and all that. Leave no doubt for Jason Kidd on him.
Yeah, he struggled a little bit of gelling with Kyrie and Luka. And that's something that they got to figure out, especially if they're going to have him as a starter. They got to figure out exactly how to utilize his strengths alongside those two.
Which is where Jaden Hardy like thrived, I thought, playing next to Luka and Kyrie, and Josh Green didn't. It's just a different type of player. It's a different type of thing he's got to work in. We go through the rest of that role. Omax is a rookie. He's coming in, and like a couple years ago at Marquette, he was, I don't even think he was a first round pick. And then last year he has a good year, and then he becomes a first round pick, and this guy that we all love and expect a lot out of eventually. But again, it's his rookie, hit or miss, 24th pick. And
it's like I expect a big year out of Omax, and I think he's going to be in the rotation more than Lively. I think Josh Green is taking a leap, so I think some people might be listening and be like, "All right, well, I thought you think these guys are going to be good." I do, but the question is, hey, what will hold these guys back if they don't make the playoffs? If the Mavericks don't make the playoffs, then you got to look at a primary, very important position in the wings that they're asking all 3 or 4 of those dudes to really project and like move up a step that none of them have really been at yet. So that's still a big ask.
To answer that person's question, why are you guys saying that? Well, what if we're wrong? Like, what if we're wrong about Josh taking the leap and Omax being ready and Grant Williams being the perfect wing? Like, what if we're wrong about that? We were wrong about JaVale last year. Like, it's possible to project something and it not work out in a way that seems like it would work really well. Derrick Jones Jr. also is like a 15-minute per game guy shooting 33% or less from 3. And so that's something that might not work for the Mavericks. So you've got 4 guys that are individually flawed in their own ways, or at least haven't played these roles yet. And we'll see what happens with them. So yeah, that was one of mine as well.
This is random, but would you be down for a Garuba Dallas connection?
Yeah, we got asked a couple of times this on Subtext today.
I would be.
I think so. It's just hard with a guy like him. He's 6'8", doesn't really shoot the 3, limited offensively, really good defensive player, can rebound it really well. His rebounded rate is like really high. But what does he do? Those guys have to be so good. Like, you're asking him to be a Draymond type, and a Draymond type has to be so good at certain things that you can play him. And so I don't know how long it would take Garuba to be ready for that. But the Mavericks also don't have a roster spot right now. They filled it with Derrick Jones Jr. They still have JaVale on the roster. And so unless JaVale leaves, then that's when they could fill it with Usman
Bring him
Garuba.
to Dallas.
But the Mavs, like Derek Lively, Omax, Garuba, Hardy, I guess Josh Green.
I'm about to touch about this in a second.
Those young guys, that's a fun little young core there. But all right, I have a couple more, but do you have a quick one?
Yeah, dude. Let me just. I'll add this on that. What would hold them back, or what was the reason? Is trying too hard to thread the needle between the young guys and the vets,
like the Warriors.
Yeah, because you really can't afford. No matter how you view the young guys, like if you think they're cornerstones for the future, or if you think, all right, these are trade pieces to land a third star next summer, you got to play them. Like, you got to show some people like what they can do, and they got to develop some. So that's my thing, is like, is it going to hurt them or help them if we're getting to the situation to where, man, they almost have to play some of the young guys because they want to develop them. They got to see what they want. They can't just like stash on the bench all season long. Like, Seth can't play over Jaden all year, and some Derrick Jones Jr. can't play over Omax all year, and Dwight and Rashawn Holmes and all the guys can't play over Lively all year. And we're looking at those 3 young guys saying, dang, they didn't play hardly at all this year.
Yeah.
So that's it could hold them back, could make it clunky at times if they try to thread the needle too hard.
Yeah, they can't not play over some of the vets, and the Mavericks also at the same time try to be selling them to some of these teams like, oh, hey, give us your high-end starter for this guy. Well, they're like, well, he's not even playing on your team, so why would we even you don't think he's that valuable? Which is what we do to some other guys. Like Rashawn Holmes isn't playing for the Kings, and I'm questioning if he's going to be good or not.
Or if they're so committed to playing them, and we're watching it saying, "Man, I'm glad that these young guys are in," but all right, like we're not winning some games,
Right.
like we're kind of losing some of these minutes, and that could be a reason why they take a step back.
Think about Jason Kidd having the decision game to game to play a 21-year-old Jaden Hardy, who is, his game lends itself to being prone to mistakes, not good on defense, compared to a 28-year-old Dante Exum that's played in the league for a while, high pick, played overseas, has played on winning teams, plays defense. Like, imagine him making that decision. We'll see what happens with it. Coming up, I've got a couple more. I've got one that I think is an underrated one that we need to talk about, and then two issues from last year that could rear their ugly head again. We'll talk about that coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
My first shot, my first make.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of this show. All right, Isaac. Got a couple more things that will hold the Mavericks back from making the playoffs, their big weaknesses so far. Here's my one that I think needs to be talked about a little bit more. Injuries to Luka and Kyrie. And I'm not talking about season-ending ridiculous, but Luka missed 15 games last year to injury or fatigue. He missed 17 games the year before that. Kyrie last season missed 10 games due to injury. And then 2 years ago, because we'll skip the year where he was unvaccinated, that one just doesn't really count. 3 years ago, then he missed 20 games, and then 2019-20 he missed 56 games to injury. Like they'll miss 15 to 20 games a year just by these little injuries or fatigue or whatever happens to these guys. They'll do some kind of load management. They did load management with Luka. Remember at the beginning of the season, he was playing so much, and then they had him sit that game against Houston, and then the Mavs lost it. You remember that? And so I think that I'm curious how they run a game with just one of Luka or Kyrie, and if they have enough talent to win those, because they don't have a guaranteed number 3 to take that next step up. It's, can Seth Curry have enough ball handling to make it work? Can Jaden Hardy? Can Dante Exum? That's what you're turning to when one of those two guys are out. Or
JaVale McGee. No, I mean they still have they still have Tim on the roster right now, so Tim would just naturally be asked to.
But that's not ball handling, right? Like they need creators, because those guys are just so everything about their offense, and they just don't have that when those guys are out. And then all of a sudden, your biggest strength becomes a huge weakness.
Yeah, I'll stay there on the Luka Kyrie stuff. The two obvious ones, if we're looking at this and saying, all right, the Mavericks don't make the playoffs next year, like what happened? The two things with both of those guys is, and it's not the number one reason why the Mavericks, all that is Luka's conditioning. Does it? Yeah. It felt like, it felt like at times it was getting worse as the season was going along.
It did
sometimes last year, and then
the next game happened, and we were like, oh no, maybe he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine, because that's what Luka could do. But
60-20 at 10.
That could play a role in it, and for Kyrie. And I know we dance around this every now and then, but like you just got to throw out there the unknown. Like, you just have to acknowledge it that, you go back year after year. I mean, we only had him for how many games last year after the trade? I mean,
it was like 27 total games. He didn't play all of them, but
yeah. So, what are the odds that a full season in Dallas that we might, something might come up? We don't know. And to where he's, out for a few weeks. And different stuff beyond just injuries. And so I think you got to at least now acknowledge that on some things of, your second superstar is super talented, but there's also that possibility, because that has been a thing over the past, handful of years. So that could be a reason too why if they miss the playoffs.
That leads me to my fourth one. Something that was a flaw last year that I talked about a lot towards the end of the season, but could rear its ugly head again. A lack of leadership. Again, and culture. The Mavs didn't have a leader last year.
Grant Williams is like, I got this.
Well, here's my thing. I did an episode solo after a game, March 1st, where I called out the Mavericks and said their fatal flaw is their lack of leadership. The biggest difference between last year and the season before that, when they had amazing, immaculate vibes and immaculate culture, and they made it to the Western Conference Finals, and then last year where they missed the playoffs entirely, I thought was leadership. You can talk about all the different on-the-court things, but they replaced the points and the the defense and the things like that. They just didn't have leadership. Will Luka step up this year? Will he be the one that takes another step and becomes the leader that this team needs? Can Kyrie take a leadership position? Because where have we seen him do it before? I was reading an article before this about like his time with the Nets, and like Kyrie is ready to step up to become a leader for the Nets. It was like before his first season or whatever. He's ready. In past instances with the Cavs, he didn't have a chance because of LeBron. And then in Cleveland, or then in Boston, he wasn't able to become a leader, and that just didn't go well for him. So can he be a leader in Brooklyn? And we know how that went. It didn't really happen. Like, players like him and players admire him, and obviously the Mavericks players do, but that's different than, being a leader, being a guy that can step up and take charge. Because here's the thing that I'm going to connect to what you just said. What if something happens with Kyrie off the court? What if it's another, documentary or an unvaccinated situation? Like, what if he goes against the norms of the NBA for something else, and it becomes a big, huge media story? And there's 1 million people in the press conference. There's 1 million people at shoot-arounds, and there's people just wanting to ask about this, and it is a big distraction. How would the Mavericks navigate that at this point? Who's the one that brings them along and says, all right, let's navigate this? Dwight Powell's probably their vet leader right now, but he was there all last season.
Depends on if Theo's back.
Well, I have this point written down too. Theo's gone, Boban's gone, your vibes guys are all gone now. So who's your vibes guys now? Is it the rookies? Probably, but I don't think that counts. You brought in Grant Williams. He's part of the, he's a VP of the Players Association. He's got leadership, qualities for sure. He's also 24, and he wears on people. That's all we heard from Boston guys. Go listen to my episode with me and John Corrales of Locked On Celtics. Grant Williams could be annoying. He talks constantly. And so is he the guy that can step in and be the new guy that becomes a leader? I don't know. And so if none of those things happen, then all of a sudden they just don't have leadership again. And that was a big issue last year.
Yeah, I guess I'm cautiously optimistic about Kyrie as a leader on this Mavs team. I think there's a lane, like Dwight is a natural leader on this team. I mean, organization, all the stuff.
Sure.
But I think the difference with Kyrie and the respect he has with the players and kind of at the spot, I mean, yeah, it could just, for fan bases who have been burnt by him, they're just laughing at me saying this, but it's I don't know. I'm just cautiously optimistic that he's going to come into the season and he's a different type of, vocal leader than Luka is. And I think Luka is a leader in his own right, but I think they could kind of tag team the leadership stuff in their own ways and also have that kind of big brother type of dude in Dwight. That is, yeah.
Yeah, I think Luka's leadership gets undercut by his whining at the refs. I think some of that loses some of its steam there. And then with Kyrie, does he want to, take that type of role, or does he want to? He's got a lot of off the court interests and things like that. And I don't know if it's a thing where he can be just maniacally focused on basketball. He's just so talented and so good that if he focuses on his own game and comes in, and he'll be amazing again. He'll score 27 points a game again. But will he be that leader that gets everybody together in the offseason, that, brings people along, that comes up to Jaden Hardy after he misses a bunch of shots and be like, you got this. Hey, let's work on this. But who knows? That'll be a thing that I think could hold him back. I got one more.
I think another underrated leadership part, and he's obviously not on the floor, but Jared Dudley is a heck of a leader on this team.
Sure,
we haven't even talked about the coaching staff of.
Oh, I'm about to.
Okay, I was wondering when you were gonna. I was letting you bring up Jason Kidd, and but just I don't know. Dudley has this unique ability to connect with the players. He still scrimmages with them. He coached in summer league, and he still feels like one of the guys. The guys, I think, still feel like he's one of them, but he's also on the coaching staff at the same time. And yeah, I think his voice as a leader in the locker room is big too.
My last one, what you just said about coaching. Jason Kidd is more like last season than he was the coach that he was in 2021-22. That will hold the Mavericks back. That will be a big thing, because I think we saw a big difference between his coaching last season towards the end of the season. I mean, we got classics.
I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
I think that apathy came into the team as well. And the Mavericks changed assistants for a reason. They brought in a bunch of different assistants and moved them around and did some stuff for a reason. They wanted a new voice. They wanted some new ideas. They wanted some new blood, for lack of a better term, in the coaching ranks. And so I think that could hold the Mavericks back. And this is a big prove-it year for Jason Kidd. We've said it a lot that is he more like the coach where they went to the Western Conference Finals or more like the coach where they missed the play-in? I mean, how wide of a chasm is that? It's almost as wide as you can get in the NBA for a team that expects to win. And so that's the thing that I think could hold them back.
Yeah. And I'll say condensation on the court. That could be
the leaking roof. How many times will the AAC roof leak again? I mean, we had a rain delay last year. Guys, we had a rain delay last year. Inside.
No, we didn't.
We did. The roof was leaking onto the court. I was there. I was sitting right in front of it. It was leaking onto the court right in front of the visitors' bench, and they delayed the game. Rain delay.
They brought out the tarp.
They brought it out. Nobody got hidden underneath it. There you go. Let us know what you think the Mavericks' biggest weakness is. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.